All right, welcome to today's episode of the Rocket Science Podcast. And in this episode, I'm joined by my friend and fellow powerlifting coach, Alex Tran. Alex is based in the Northeast, and I've known Alex now for about 2 years, give or take 2 years. So he's been a great help to me, helping me develop as a coach and learn, as well as an additional mind to bounce ideas off of. So in this episode, we discuss technique. I've saved this topic for Alex as I think he is probably the most interesting person to discuss technique with. He has a very interesting way of thinking about it and explaining it and kind of teaching it. So we really get into a lot of different abstract ideas. We talk about cueing for different kinds of lifters, when to apply a movement constraint versus just flat out cueing or explaining something, how to go about explaining different things to athletes when it comes to technique, the use of videos, audio, text. We discuss movement from other sports and how we can apply some of those same thought processes to powerlifting. So really just overall, very interesting deep dive in movement. And it's really hard to pinpoint some of the exact topics we hit on because we just kind of really flowed through a lot of different ideas. If you enjoy, leave a like, comment, subscribe. All of Alex's information is going to be down below in the description. Both his Instagram accounts, he has his main coaching page, Alex Tran PL, and then he also has 3out.mg, which is an additional page he has for edits and kind of a creative page where he posts powerlifting related stuff. So check both those out, and without further ado, enjoy. All right,
It's
sir.
it's kind of funny that like in our little group that kind of became like my thing, like my little niche
You're the movement guy.
guy. I don't
Well,
know.
I've been doing this now for like a year, I think, and I wanted like so Eric's when I always planned to have like Eric on, and he was on the last one, and it was always I want to talk about meet day and handling and like managing lots of lifters at a meet and stuff because that's his thing. And with you, it was always technique. Like I just wanted to like go through different technical stuff. So
Yeah. Dude, I
yeah.
feel like I feel like partially I've had good like influences being coached by JJ Ng from Singapore. He was like crazy. And then I mean, I'm sure you've tapped into the Technique Matters YouTube channel and just like seeing the way that they think about technique over there. I feel like in the States, we have like a kind of like a black and white view of technique, especially like earlier powerlifting. Like think like t early 2010s, late 2000s. It was very black and white. It was very just like, you know, push the knees out and just like very simple stuff. And then I kind of got exposed to like that side of things and how they think of things in Singapore and Australia and Hong Kong and all that side of powerlifting. And like it was so much more like abstract and creative. And I feel like that really explained like movement well because
Mhm.
movement was never like black and white. And I mean, I played basketball growing up. You played baseball. Um, it's so like random, and your body just kind of like does whatever it wants to do
Mhm.
sometimes, and especially when you're playing sports, you don't really think. And the way that they like ex describe technique and the way that they explain the way that your body moves, it just made so much more sense. That it was like just this free-flowing system that always acts just purely on instinct, and like the few parts of your body that you can control are going to dictate like which way it moves and all of that. So like I feel like the way that I came up with most of my technique framework was like one, having the right influences, but I think the other one was just like watching sports and watching dance was big. Just like looking at the way that people move. Brad loves like archery and golf. I feel like he's always
Mhm.
talking about that. Just like just seeing the way that people do things and seeing the way that people either how they move in chaos with like basketball, football, volleyball, things like that, or seeing how they move in like more, a rigid, fixed environment like powerlifting, like golf, like archery, um, and kind of like, watching what people do. I feel like that's where a lot of that framework came from, not from always watching powerlifting, but trying to relate other sports and other things to powerlifting. I feel like that
Yeah.
was pretty.
I feel like those who do play sports growing up like do get that exposure to like being like if you work with some maybe like a higher level coach or whatever, like you are going to probably be exposed to very high levels of like movement analysis.
Mhm.
Like I grew up playing baseball and like I've worked with or worked with a few different coaches growing up and stuff, and it's crazy how like everyone views things a little bit differently. Everyone has their own way of kind of teaching things, but like how much analyzation goes into it. And you see like the analytics in sports now, and now we're seeing like people really take that high level of I guess movement and viewing how people move and like applying it to powerlifting. Like it is really interesting. And it's like just interesting to see people take those skill sets they may have been exposed to in other sports or whatever growing up, applying it to powerlifting. Because yes, I do think you mentioned the movement matters, is that right, on YouTube?
Technique matters.
I haven't seen their stuff. They
Oh, man, they're
YouTube
sick.
channel.
They're incredible. Yeah, they don't really post that much anymore, but they were on like a good like year or two tear where they were posting a lot.
Hmm.
And it was like very, I guess like niche, like small content, like small pieces of technique of just like hand position on bench, like small like foot rooting stuff,
Hmm.
little wedge things here and there, just like super, super small technique stuff that you could apply it in like as granular as it is, but you could also look at those technique videos and like understand the macro perspective of like why this all does matter and how like literally changing your grip from, on bench, like one of the big things that JJ was kind of teaching me was how you hold or like what fingers you put pressure on when you bench can really like change how the arm moves and how the shoulder moves kind of
Hmm.
downstream. Or like if you're kind of squeezing a little bit more on the outside and more of the weight is on the outside of the palm, like you naturally kind of get a little bit more, external rotation and your elbow tucks a little bit more. Whereas if you kind of get more weight on the inside webbing area, you can kind of get more flare. It's like small things like that. I felt
Yeah.
like that had a massive, massive effect on me just understanding technique of like seeing how little parts of the foot, little parts of the hand, little parts of the elbow can like change how everything else moves. And again, it's all that it goes back to the body is just going to do whatever it does. And the little things that you can like intentionally change are going to affect how the body falls, how the body comes back up.
Yeah. It's so interesting too. Like you bring up the little cues and stuff, how much like one change can have so much downstream effects. And we were
Yeah.
talking before this about like potentially including like overhauling as a topic, and we realized like we don't really overhaul technique very often. And it is usually like the small things, like I'm one little cue or one adjustment to something that can like have so many positive benefits to someone's movement. When do you feel like you, I guess, really started um, becoming more of like the technique guy or more of the technique guy? That's
Yeah,
not the
I
word,
know,
but
I know, I
you know
hate
what I
that,
mean? Like,
like that thing,
yeah,
that technique, and
I've
I
heard
still feel like
people
I'm
like
not doing
refer to
that.
themselves like that. But when did you feel like you really developed those skills the most? Because like for me, I feel like I've always had a pretty simple view of technique up until probably the last year and really the last 6 months. I feel like that's developed a lot for me just with mentorships and stuff. But I know you've been on a lot of that for a while.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like I delve into the powerlifting world through like the PRI Bill Hartman rabbit hole.
Hmm.
So that was like almost my introduction into powerlifting. Like I had my basic, like I really love like Bart Kwan, Mike, like that group of powerlifters, and
Hmm.
they taught me like enough. But when I really started trying to learn, I didn't necessarily go to like Joey. I didn't go to Barbell. I didn't go to like Alan Thrall to go learn about powerlifting. I went to like Bill Hartman, Connor Harris, Alex Effer, Zach Couples, like those
Hmm.
expansion compression model guys, and they like just drill into your head like you need to know anatomy, you need to know the skeleton, and you need to know like these invisible forces that act upon the body. And I was like, dude, this is the truth. Like this is crazy. And I think my first like 6 months or a year of powerlifting was like so focused on like those concepts that I neglected like all the basic stuff.
Hmm.
But I feel like that having that as my base was really good in terms of just understanding the way that the body moves, understanding compensations and all that stuff. I feel like I've always been like pretty into movement and just figuring out movement. Just playing basketball growing up, like I had like an obsession with just like learning my jump shot and trying to like make little adjustments to make it feel better. And I think I kept doing too many adjustments, and now my jump shot's just broken. But I love like shooting around, feeling like it was off, and then like being like, yo, why don't I just like tuck my elbow out a little bit more and see how that feels? And I would make 3 or 4 in a row. And I like loved that process. And I
Yeah.
thought that was so fun. And so I think a combination of like that inherent interest in figuring out movement and then also just, having those really big influences um, kind of just came together once I started powerlifting. And I think I kind of saw it. A couple things I think that were really, really eye-opening to me was um, watching dancers.
Hmm.
And this was like a random podcast from a while ago. I forget who even said it. And they were saying that if you ever go to like a football locker room, like everyone knows how to dance. And
Oh, that's interesting. Like just because they're so
yeah,
athletic and
they're
stuff.
just so athletic, but they understand like rhythm,
Hmm.
right? Rhythm, tempo, like they flow super well. And then once I unlocked this like interest in flow and kind of what that meant, that I feel like opened up so much more
Hmm.
in terms of like what technique could offer in powerlifting. Because, I made that post a long, long time ago about like building rhythm on deadlifts and how like higher rep stuff or even having like a top-down setup can really like improve your rhythm going into the wedge. Um, and even like with the other lifts, like everyone kind of moves at their own tempo, everyone moves
Hmm.
at their own cadence. So once I kind of had that base of like of the anatomy and kind of I watched enough powerlifting and everybody kind of moves similarly, um, then you can kind of tap into these, I guess, like intangible concepts of
Hmm.
tempo, cadence, flow, rhythm. Um, and when you watch people and some people move more rigid, some people move more fluidly, uh, that becomes like really, really interesting to me. And then, that leads to the archetypes, that leads to, who's like pressy, who's not pressy, things like that. And I think um, that was really, really big for me too.
The I like that you bring up the flow, and honestly, I don't think I've ever heard you use the term cadence, but I find myself using that a lot with people, like when just referring to like, hey, I like the cadence at which you're like setting up and like the step-by-step process to that or whatever. And the flow, I really like that. And to use that idea with high rep deadlifters, your post kind of inspired that. I don't have a ton of high rep or people doing a bunch of high reps. Just I don't naturally have a ton of really well leveraged pullers right now. But my one client, Braden, super well leveraged, like very long arms, like your traditional, like he's doing 2 deadlift singles a week type of leverages. And his secondary day is those high reps, like ascending work. And I always tell him, it's like, I want you feeling like you're flowing through these. I want you to strap up so you don't have to worry about grip and just flow through these and really generate like a good rhythm with those. So it's interesting you bring those. Well, I mean, the flow term I've seen your post on, and that's what inspired a lot of that. But like the cadence, I always am using that with people. Um,
You
you
have a great flow to your deadlift. I don't
do
know if
I?
I know you're not like the most well built for it, but I think it just looks like fluid. Like it doesn't really look like you're putting that much effort into like getting into position, and you just do it, and then just comes up, and then it
It
looks very smooth.
it feels terrible right now. I'm a little too fat right now, so it really feels bad. But
Yeah. It looks good. I'll
if
tell
I
you that.
lose another 10 pounds, it'll feel pretty good, I think. It's just right now it's my body weight is not allowing my deadlift to feel good. But I mean it's pretty strong. It's decently strong right now considering I had like a little bit of time off. But yeah, like I feel like I've just been powerlifting so long that like I don't really think a lot about technique. Squat's about the only thing I overthink technique or think a lot on. And I think that's more to my detriment. But like my deadlift, yeah, I
Yeah.
am pretty automatic with that at that point. So, but it's nice to be conventional puller and not, just not super well leveraged. So it's just grip and rip really. But
Yeah.
um, I want to get into movement constraints versus variations because this is something I shouldn't say change my mind on, but the frequency at which I'm programming someone or how often I'm programming someone like a variation to fixed technique versus just like, hey, do this instead and cueing it verbally has changed a lot. And I've talked well, me and Tyler made an info post on this a while back, and I think we talked about it in our podcast episode. Um, but to kind of set or give some background, when I first came into powerlifting, Steve DeNovi was a huge inspiration for me, and he's always been someone who's big on movement constraints. He's got some videos over like some older YouTube videos over using variations and stuff and the benefits of different variations. And then he's got a Powerlifting Now video covering movement constraints. And I think around that time, when a lot of my like opinions are being formulated or my early opinions are being formulated, I was very big on movement constraints, very big on variation. So like I was using a lot of pause squats to do certain things. I was using like SSB to like fix bracing on a squat, tempo squats to fix bracing and center of mass control, like tempo bench to fix like maybe like elbow position or leg drive. And I still like the tempo for leg drive, pause deadlifts, everything. I was spamming a lot of variations, and now I think as I've developed my systems and gotten better at just coaching technique, and some of my opinions have changed. Where I'm still open to like going to a movement constraint. Like for example, I just actually had a client who we were doing SSB on her secondary squat day to kind of work on some of the bracing stuff we were having issues with, and it cleared it right up. Like she was able to feel that, feel the natural like rib cage stack, and then we transitioned the secondary day back to like a low bar and no issues. But I find now I'm using variations more. So I don't know if that's something where your opinion is with that. Like, do you tend to find yourself reaching for like programming changes, or do you tend to find yourself looking more so like just verbally cueing something to someone or making a video just explaining something?
I think if the lifter is either experienced enough or intelligent enough to understand where they are and where I want them to be, then I might give them a movement constraint, right? Whereas you work with some newer lifters or lifters who aren't as like kinesthetically aware, and they're just going to do the movement constraint in the flawed pattern that they already have.
Hmm.
And then either it's just going to reinforce that bad pattern or it's just not really going to. So I think it's two things. One, how effective is the movement constraint for the lifter? Like there are certain lifters who their bench looks substantially, excuse me, they look substantially worse on a tempo bench. Just the way that they execute it, the way that they're built, right? Like I'm usually not giving a tempo bench to somebody who's super close grip, flat back, like long range of motion on bench. Usually going to give like a 2 count pause or something. Like I
Hmm.
think the variation that you use matters a lot. And if that lifter isn't going to respond super well to that specific variation, then I would look to either accessory work or to uh, cues, right? I think the other thing is that I bet Steve talked about was that there are a lot of people who aren't very responsive to cues. And then I might use a movement constraint, but most of the time I feel like I'm using that movement constraint to convey some sort of like sensory experience, right? You kind of talked about SSB to improve that rib cage positioning. Like if that person isn't super well versed in just like moving their body under the bar and they feel like they can't really get into that position, I might give them the SSB to show them like, oh, this is what it feels like for your rib cage to be stacked over your pelvis. This is what it feels like to have that ab tension. I might do that for a block, maybe 2 blocks, just to, let them feel what it's like to have some weight and hold that position. But ultimately, I'm trying to bring it back, and I'm trying to bring it back to some sort of comp stuff. And my goal is to use that variation or to use that movement constraint to show them this is what you should be feeling when you're under the bar. And then once they get under the bar, hopefully, fingers crossed, things work, that they're able to, replicate that and they're able to recreate that. So I think to answer your question, I personally find myself queuing a lot more. Um, just with the movement constraint, now you kind of have to take into consideration programming changes, and some lifters are very sensitive to certain variations, and some lifters are very sensitive to certain things in their program, and I might not want to touch that. But also, I think I personally maybe work with a lot of lifters who don't know where they're going wrong, and if they were to have a movement constraint, they would probably just do it wrong.
Hmm.
Or I feel like I can also convey that message very easily through words or just being like, I want you to feel this, I want you to find this. Um, and kind of like you're saying, like as my technique queuing model improves and my system improves and my knowledge kind of expands, I find myself feeling like I can solve a lot of these technique problems with simple queuing, rather than needing to change the program and then make adjustments, based off of that, with the movement constraint.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you bring up the idea that like not everyone internalizes or understands a cue the same. Like, you know, uh belt to heels feel might be different to me than it is to you. Like if I tell someone that, they may, internalize that and understand that differently. And I think the big thing if you're using variations or if you're using just like a basic cue, is you got to like very thoroughly explain what you're trying to do. And I think videos are really a good way to do that.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
always sending videos to people.
Mirroring is huge, especially with like ex-athletes. I feel like the way that you learn how to play sports is very much you just watch sports and you just
Uh-huh.
try to do stuff. Like I would just watch basketball on TV and I would just go in my backyard and just try it out and
Yeah.
just see like, and then I would just learn like that, you know. And I think there are a lot of athletes who come into powerlifting and their ability to mirror and mimic is like so good. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think most people are probably like that. Like we're very visual creatures. Um, and there are all these like smaller things that you can do in order to improve technique. And I think one of the big ones that I remember hearing a while ago was like having a lifter squat in front of a mirror. And it messes you up when you're like in the moment and you know there's 95% on your back. But if it's like a plate, two reds on the bar and you're just watching yourself and you can kind of like see where your knees are going, see where your feet are turning and all that stuff, I think that visual input helps like a ton.
Hmm. Yeah, Brad Couilliard's used the term emulation, and he said he was really there was a point. I think we were on like a call with him. I don't know if you were there. I think you were there, and he said that he's big on emulation. Like he'll just, hey, go look at this person's setup. I want you to just do that.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I mean, oftentimes when I'm onboarding people and I'm making those initial changes to like a setup, like a bench setup or deadlift setup, like I'll just pull up one of my athletes, or like someone off Instagram or whatever, and be like, hey, this is what I'm trying to get you to do, as like an additional example, because they can actually see it like in practice as opposed to me like standing in my kitchen like with a
Yeah.
broomstick. So,
Do you do
um,
that all for yourself? Like,
when,
do you have any like lifters in your head that you're kind of trying to copy a little bit?
who me?
Yeah.
Um, No, when I was younger, for sure. I used to watch like Wheeze squat and be like, dude, I gotta set up just like Wheeze on squat. For sure. Like
Yeah.
Wheeze was one like for a squat. But otherwise, no. I don't think I'm like built very specifically for like any of the lifts. And I'm much less neurotic than I used to be too. But I'm not like it's not like I have really long arms and it's like, okay, I have to set up just like so and so, you know what I mean? On the deadlift or whatever. So, I don't know. I feel like I just kind of fall into the standard bell curve on like honestly all three lifts. Um, so no, but do you?
Yeah, I'll like bench. I don't have anything bench. I feel like I'm pretty intuitive with. Deadlifts, I've been trying to do a little bit of a meal. I bet you can never see it. Like you probably can't see the difference. I just like the way he wedges,
Hmm.
and I've just been kind of thinking about that a little bit more. And then squat, it really just depends on how the day is. Like if the day is good, in my head, I feel like I'm Russ for some reason. I feel like I just squat like him.
Your squat looks nothing like Russ's
We're
squat.
built the total opposite. And on days that I feel really good, I just have like Russ in my head. I'm like, I'm just gonna squat like this, and it just comes out like clean. Visually, it doesn't look anything like it. I think
No, it doesn't.
like there's a thought there. And then on days where like it doesn't really feel as good, and you know the movement patterns are a little creaky, I think of Tiffany Chapon,
Hmm.
that like narrow stance, just
Yeah.
like hips drift back, push the knees forward, and just like see what happens. And I on bad days I'll think like
I
that.
think I think your squat visually looks like that.
Yeah, it doesn't look anything like
No, it looks
Russ.
nothing like Russ. Like not even close, really. But that's interesting. No,
Yeah.
I feel like now. No, I think the last, honestly, since working with Devin, I don't think I've really thought about my technique much.
Your guys' deadlift looks is a little similar, a little similar. Kind of that like whip, call it the whip.
Yeah, a little bit. He's very hingy. I don't think I'm quite that hingy. I round a little more, I feel like. But I've also never seen him deadlift. Well, I saw him deadlift in person once. Um, yeah, but
It's
no,
funny.
I haven't
I answer the
dedicated.
question. I like thinking of like certain lifters in my head, especially when I'm in that zone. I just like feel like I'm like, I'm just trying to be like this. And I'm
I used to be.
yeah.
I used to be. Not as much anymore. Maybe that's the missing piece. Maybe I need to do that. Maybe I need
You
to
gotta, dude, the
go into a
pendulum
session and
always
feel like
swings.
Russ.
Pendulum always swings back. Like at some
Mhm.
point, you're gonna have to go back to like your first year or two of powerlifting, and you're fucking taking pre before every single session, and you're like geeking out over your last warm up. You're kicking the tripod down, fucking flipping the camera off after each top set. Like, I
I've thought
felt
about going back and watching like old like Russ vlogs and all that shit because I feel like it would like give me a spark of motivation, you know what I
yeah.
mean?
I
Because
do that.
I don't consume any powerlifting content outside of like educational stuff anymore. Like I don't know if you do, but I consume like zero outside of like podcasts and like probably now and YouTube
I
that's
have it on in the
fun.
background, but there are like sets of videos, and they're not even powerlifting videos. It's just like bodybuilding videos from when I'm young, and they just have like I guess a special place in my brain
Mm.
that if I ever feel like oh I have a big session, like I really want to get amped for this, like before I leave for the gym, I'll just like have it on in the background, and I'll just like remember like where my head was at when I was 16 and I was deadlifting like 275 for the first time.
That's electric.
Yeah, that was fun. I had like a really good period of training before, like a years ago. And I don't know if you watched Sean Noriega videos like
Mhm.
back then, but he had this series called like Blame Ben,
Yeah,
and
I
if
remember
he was
that.
coached by Ben Esgro. And I don't know, for some reason I like really gravitated toward those videos. I just really liked them. And there was nothing special, like he wasn't doing anything crazy. It was a lot of volume that he was doing, but this wasn't like a incredibly good period of training for him. I just really liked those videos. And before every primary session, on the way to the gym, I would just have that video playing, like in my car, and I would just watch it, and then I'd finish the video. Like I'd sit in the gym parking lot, finish the video, and then I'd be like, "All right, I'm fucking ready," and then I'll just go in and have great training. And I don't know, there's another like psychological, mental side of training that I feel like I'm not there yet as an athlete that I need to tap into that, but
Mhm.
sometimes I will, and it feels like fucking sick. It feels like I'm like a national champion with like a 380 dots.
Yeah. I need to get back on that, I think. It might fire me up a little bit.
It'll fire me up. It'll fire.
Um, you mentioned bodybuilders, and one thing that's bodybuilders are good at is the accessory movements and like just moving with that. And I feel like now like technique with accessories and stuff is like actually well, not as much like right now, but like in the last couple of years, it's so much more talked about with like joint angles and all that stuff. But kind of referring to using accessories to improve technique, squat bench double technique. Because you brought this idea up. Um, I guess what in what instances are you gravitating towards, hey, let's actually just use a variation or an accessory movement and like is that like a I guess a replacement for the exercise or is that going to go on a secondary day or something or is it just going to be in addition to what they're doing?
It'll usually be in addition. So I think the two reasons why I'm using an accessory to improve technique, one is going to be to increase movement options, increase ERI on the hip and the shoulder, things like that. But the other, I think, is a little bit more underrated, is to convey the sensory experience, right? Show someone what it's like to feel very extended, show someone what it's like to feel very kind of like tucked and ribs down, show someone what it feels like to have their elbow a little bit more flared or tucked on an upper body movement. So in terms of like increasing movement options, I think that one's a little bit more obvious and a little bit more talked about. And I don't really feel like I need to get super, super deep into that. You look at a lifter and you look at kind of the certain angles that they're at, like where they're deficient and where they're having trouble with, and you can kind of decipher like, oh, this guy might be missing some internal rotation, and I'll use an accessory for that. Hopefully that'll carry over. The other thing is like when I'm looking at a lifter and they're hitting this, pretty easy like RP6, RP7 lift, but we're trying to cue and they just like can't really they don't really get like what I'm trying to do. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, like, why don't you stand a little bit taller, try to like, get those ribs up, chest high, sit a little bit more extended, and they're under the bar and they just like can't really do that. I think there's some value in doing accessories or even like modifying the current accessories that you're doing in order to give the lifter, I guess, some experience in that position so that once they are under the bar, they're a little bit more kinesthetically aware, right? So a couple of my favorites are like if I have a lifter doing a seated cable row, I'll probably bump the reps up to like 15 to 20 so that the weight isn't super light. Oh, the weight is super light. And I'll just be like, yo, when you're doing this, instead of trying to like really reach forward and trying to like pull super hard, I'm gonna bring the weight down by like two stacks. I really want you to, sit there, pull the ribs up, extend the lower back, and just kind of feel what it's like to like arch, right? Feel what it's
Mhm.
like to sit up super tall. And then as you're pulling, as you're rowing, same thing, just squeeze everything on the backside, arch your lower back, squeeze your shoulders together, and just like feel what it's like to like have that compression on the backside, feel what it's like to have that extension. Same thing with, things like 45-degree hyperextensions, kind of the same ideal where I'll be like, yeah, squeeze your glutes, but also at the top, like maybe try and arch a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Learn how to feel that extension on bench. Been really liking like having certain people play around with elbow positioning on like a dumbbell press. So I'll be like, hey, on your bench looks great. Looks like you're really, really flared. I do want a little bit more of a tuck. Let's do something like a feet up neutral grip dumbbell press, kind of feel what it's like to produce force in that more tucked position and just be very conscious of where your elbow is. And on the other side, if you're a little bit too tucked, I might do something like I've been really liking Larson dumbbell press, or even just flat dumbbell press. And I'll be like, hey, let's let those elbows drift out, try and kind of crank that. And that's kind of like the position that I'm trying to replicate on the actual, bench movement.
Mhm.
The way that I kind of think about it is like mobility versus flexibility, and mobility is like control within a certain range of motion. Flexibility is just access to that range of motion. Control, I think, inherently implies strength within that range of motion too. So I could get my arm, this far back, but realistically, I can't express any sort of strength here. And when you have 90-95% on the bar, you're probably unable to express strength in, the positions that you want to be in. So what I'll do is, let's just pull it back, do some accessories, try to build that mobility, try to build that strength in that range of motion that I want you to, be strong on and be able to express, when you're on the bar. And then we'll do that for a couple weeks, get stronger in that, certain position. And hopefully the goal is to be able to express that under the bar.
I like the dumbbell example. I have a client, she has very high arch, very short arms. No, I shouldn't say very short arms, I guess, but high arch, well leveraged for bench press. And when she came to me, she had the classic like, over tuck, getting the lats on the bench press, all of that. And I gave her a dumbbell press. I love like a neutral grip dumbbell press. Generally, if I'm just gonna plug it in, it's usually like a neutral grip, but for her, I intentionally programmed it as like a like I want the hands more pronated, and the elbows to kind of be flared out. And I was like, I want you flaring on this because this is the feeling I want you to have on your comp bench, and I want to chase this on the comp bench. So, and then like using like maybe like a tempo bench or something in there as well. But that's interesting. I've never heard of the example. Like I know. I've heard you talk about the 45-degree hyper, but the rowing one I like with because you have to actually resist against said force and keep the compression on the back half, and then you also are moving through it too, like it's dynamic. So that's interesting.
I think
Um,
I heard somewhere, I think Jordan Shallow from Prescript said it. And he was saying that like biomechanics isn't just skeleton and muscle, but it's also brain.
mhm,
And, as much as we like to think that accessory work is just, maybe increase some measurements in your range of motion, put on some muscle, there's also kind of like this neurological part of it where you're always taking in the sensory input, you're always reading and reacting to things, whether or not you're conscious of it. And if we can kind of put you in the environment where your body is always uh, or your brain is always being exposed to this certain position and it's always learning how to adapt to it, then I think that we can see a lot of really good carryover, into the SPD stuff.
mhm.
So, you know, um, that's just like another layer of being intentional with your accessory programming of, knowing like, hey, you're doing a bicep curl and realistically, I don't care like what bicep curl you do. I'm kind of just giving you this bicep curl. Let me maybe give you like an incline bicep curl and have you externally rotate a little bit just to show you what it's like to have that elbow a little bit more tucked, right?
Mhm.
Um, or just things of that nature. I think other things is like lat pull downs, whether you're going wider or narrower, based on squat grip, like things like that. I think Steve or Brad or someone mentioned a while ago of them changing their minds on behind the neck lat pull downs too, just for the sake of squats and kind of replicating that low bar position. So yeah, I really like kind of thinking of it like that, where it's like, what are the positions that I'm trying to achieve on the squat, bench, and deadlift? And do I need to cue you, or can I just, be very intentional with the way that you're executing your accessories? Um, and hopefully that will translate over. And I think a lot of people are way more comfortable getting kind of more technical and neurotic on their accessories just because rep ranges are higher, they're not pushing as much weight, safety isn't really a concern. Whereas on the SBD, like you have a top triple at 8, probably don't want to be thinking too much about, trying to stay extended, trying to do certain things with your elbows. Like you kind of just want to like push as hard as you can.
Yeah. I've talked about that a lot with people lately, or a few times where we do want to work on things at certain times, but there is a time when it's like, or the goal should always be, I feel like, to get to the point where the brain can shut off. Like I know with my, like we already talked about my deadlift, I don't even think. There's no cues. There's nothing specific I'm thinking about. I just do it. And I feel like that's kind of the place we want to try to get to, or at least get to the point where you have very minimal, very low maintenance cueing, and like the technique's very low maintenance. Um, and that's something I talked a lot with people. And I feel like also timing of where you're at in a block or what the intensity looks like too, um, is gonna matter when you decide, hey, you tell someone, hey, shut the brain off, or hey, focus on this, that sort of thing. Um, we talked about, honestly, we've talked a lot about queuing and stuff, but one of the topics we have on here is when to let lifters be. Um, I want to hear your thoughts on that because th this is something I've kind of thought about, or it's not really a theory, I guess, but something I have thought about. And um, the fact that like people will naturally probably just get better if you don't mess with anything, or if you just kind of play the role of like bumpers at the bowling alley and you just keep them in in line. So I guess what are your thoughts with that? When do you let people just do their thing?
Yeah, I think that it kind of depends on the experience level of the lifter. And I think it can go both ways. Like I think there are new lifters who you can just let them, train and lift and their brain will just kind of sort it out. But I also think there are new lifters where you do have to be a little bit more intentional with how they're moving and do the same thing where you're putting the bumpers up and you're just kind of being like, hey, remember to this, remember to this.
Mhm.
The other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about just letting your brain shut off and just letting it move is I see this a lot with some of my stronger lifters and some of the lifters who have been powerlifting for a longer time, where they're not necessarily thinking about cues. They're not necessarily thinking about putting their body in a certain position, and they're just chasing like a familiar feeling,
Mhm.
right? I bet if you ask some of the world champions, like, oh, what are you thinking about when you're squatting? What are some cues that you think about when you're benching or whatever? They might have like one or two things, but ultimately they've been doing it for so long that their brain will shut off and they're just going to what feels comfortable.
Mhm.
They're not really doing a whole lot. So I think that, you know, when it comes to newer lifters, there's going to be some neurological adaptation, and I think that might be a case where I might do a movement constraint over a cue because kinesthetically they're not super aware. The cue probably is going to be super responsive to them, but um, a movement constraint might be a lot better. On the other hand, with a more elite lifter, they might be super responsive to a cue just because, the way that their body moves and their sensitivity to certain positions. But the other thing is like I might just watch an elite lifter, see that they're kind of hinging over a little bit too much, and just be like, hey, like find your legs, find your quads more,
Mhm.
right? And it's just chasing that feeling, chasing that sensation. And they don't really have to think too much about, driving the knees more forward, pushing the hips too far back, opening the knees up, whatever. They're so familiar with their body and they're so comfortable under the bar that they know like what feels good and they know what doesn't feel good. And there are times where this is myself, like Chris doesn't really give me a ton of technique stuff. And I'm not in the gym like trying to figure out anything technically. I'm more just trying to feel out like what feels good. Sometimes, it doesn't even make any sense. Like sometimes I just do certain things. I'm just like, let's see what this feels like. And it feels way better.
Mhm.
I think when you do get to a certain point in your, powerlifting career, a lot of the technique stuff becomes pretty intuitive. The technique changes aren't happening as often, and it almost becomes like more difficult to try and boil it down to like one cue or a certain direction in programming. It's more of just chasing a feeling of what feels good because I know what feels good. I also know what feels really bad. And I know that I've gone back and forth between this feels good, this feels bad. So I'm very familiar with that feeling of good and bad. And
Mhm.
I can always, well, I don't want to say I can always, when the time comes, I kind of know the direction that I want to go to if things feel good, if things feel bad and I want them to feel good, basically.
Mhm.
So yeah, kind of like a wishy-washy answer. I think
No, I think that was really insightful.
it's very much just about a feeling when you're at a certain point. I think
Mhm.
when it's newer, um, the types of cueing I think matters. Like a lot of new lifters aren't great at like directional cueing. I found where I can't really say push the knees forward more or push the knees back more, right?
Mhm.
Like that uh directional cueing of like let's do a little bit more of this, a little bit less of this, but things like belt to heels, like more just concrete, think about this type of cueing, I think works a lot better for them.
Um, I the idea that as you get more advanced, you're chasing a feeling is interesting because, like you said, Chris doesn't tinker with your technique much. Like Devin doesn't give me a whole lot when it comes to technique either. Like we're just at the point where it's like everything's in that range of like good enough. But like I know with my squat, like there has been some clunkiness and stuff recently, and there's nothing that needs fixed. Like I just need to slowly play with things slowly. Like you said, it goes back to like shooting a basketball. Like I need to flare my elbow out a tiny bit more, on the jump shot. Same thing with the squat. I need to just find where that is and whatever is going to feel good and continue to do that. Um, and I feel like the common theme with my lifters is when I start with someone, I'm probably if I'm gonna make technique changes, like I'm gonna start those things. And then as we work together for a longer period of time, like their technique should get to the point where like we're not really changing much. And like you said, we're chasing the feeling. We're chasing the feedback of, hey, my squat, my bench, my deadlift feels good, technique feels good. And when we kind of achieve that and everything's in that range of like good enough, there's not a lot of additional feedback that's coming in technique related. And from there, we're just talking about, performance trends or whatever the case may be. So um, I feel like my idea that I kind of brought up initially was I think you can just tell someone if someone's really new, you don't even really need to even give them like variations or anything like that. I feel like sometimes, I mean, you can, if there's certain things you want to fix, but I feel like I could just take someone who's really new and who maybe they've been like gym bro squatting a little bit, be like, hey, do this one thing just to make sure we're hitting depth. And then I'm going to leave you be for 6 months and I'm just going to program and we're just going to, play the bumpers, but otherwise I'm just gonna let you be. And people naturally get like so much better. And I think of like my own squat, like when I first started powerlifting, like was probably not super pretty, but it was making progress. And we never tinkered with anything. We let everything be. And I naturally was just chasing those feelings and you know, over time just improved. So I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I feel like with newer lifters, where their movement patterns aren't as consistent, or they're more likely to be able to just change something one day, randomly or whatever, and see a potential change. I feel like sometimes you don't even really need to, you need to coach technique, but you can kind of let them do their thing as well, and kind of let them just, they're going to get better. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like if you, again, going back to like basketball, if you tell a kid, hey, this kid's never shot a basketball. Hey, you're gonna go watch basketball for like 10 minutes. You're gonna watch these people shoot, and then you're gonna go play, and you're gonna do that, and you're just gonna keep doing that. And they're gonna get better at it. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna figure it out.
That's such a testament to kind of what we were talking about in the very beginning, which is just your body's ability to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brain ability to figure out like it's not a conscious thing that you're doing. It's you just demand like environment, demand, and your brain's like, fuck, either I figure it out or I'm gonna fall, and I probably don't want to fall. So let me just do it. And then they start squatting and it looks like a deer that was just born and their feet are
Yeah.
all over the place. And then it's like, I'm not gonna tell you to put your knees out. I know you're trying.
Yeah.
Your body just doesn't. It can't do it. Like, you're physically just not strong enough to do it. But like you do it a few more times, and it's like, oh, okay, your squat actually looks not like shit, basically.
Yeah.
I also think that's another reason why it's so important for coaches to train.
Yeah.
And
I think it is.
to build that empathy of like sensory experience. right? It's like I
Mhm.
need to be able to relate to a lifter when they say that my squat doesn't feel squatty.
Mhm.
If I'm just like a powerlifting coach and I don't train, I don't squat, I don't bench, I don't deadlift, and I'm just looking at it from like a third party perspective, I probably will have no indication of whether or not your squat feels squatty or not. But because I train, because I have had squatty days and I have had like days on where my squat feels more foldy, I can I can understand that. And I had a conversation with a client a couple of weeks ago, and she's not a powerlifting coach. She's like hasn't really dived into a ton of, powerlifting educational content. But I just used the word like a pressy bench with her. And she's like, yes, like that was the perfect word to describe it. I don't know what that means, but my
Mhm.
bench felt super pressy. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I could ever uh I don't think I could ever use that word if I never experienced it in the gym.
Mhm.
And if I was a powerlifting coach and I never powerlifted and I just looked at her bench on a day that felt pressy and a day that didn't feel pressy, I would probably not see that much of a difference. So like you need to be able to relate to your athletes on an athlete level, right? Athlete to athlete. And
Mhm.
then being smart enough as a coach to be aware of what your training feels like in the moment and trying to articulate those feelings to your athlete. Like even though you guys are built totally different, there are still the same things that we all experience as athletes, bouncing out of the hole, having your elbow like slide right into position when you bench, right? Like what it feels like for the bar to like pop off the floor. A lot of that stuff you're not seeing on camera, but that's all sensory. That's all just a feeling. And if you can empathize with your lifter and you can, they can tell you something and you know exactly what they mean without needing to watch the video, without needing for them to explain themselves. I think that's such like a useful tool in your technique coaching bag.
Mhm. Yeah, I think sometimes you can be too objective, where you can look at the video and be like, "Oh, this actually does look fine," but maybe it doesn't feel fine. Um, and I feel like with powerlifting, we have to, like, I think it is very important to train. And some people say, "Oh, you should compete too," and I think there's a benefit on top of technique to being able to relate to people on like a level where like, hey, like a lead from the front type, like, hey, I'm getting after it. I'm working really hard. My nutrition's dialed in. I've got all these things going on and I'm still able to prioritize, X, Y, Z to make sure training goes well and to be able to use that as a way to maybe hold athletes accountable as well, on top of like the relating to how they're feeling or how technique feels and that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I like that you bring that up. I think that's a really good point. Um, there was something else I was gonna say. Um, Oh, I guess one thing I thought about was, the meme where it's a bell curve and it's like the idiot's on one side, and he's like, "Oh, I need to I don't need to think about technique.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna do." And then there's the dude in the top who's like, I need to do X, Y, Z and Q and variations." And then there's like the elite level lifter who's like cool as fuck and he's like,
Yeah.
"I don't need to think." It's like that. Like I really
It's
think
just
and I think
John Mack going down to pick up the bar, and that's
yeah.
it.
Yeah. And I think it's like that too. Like I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing where like the earlier someone is, I feel like, hey, we're just gonna lift weights. Like you brought up the deer squatting where like you give some lanky kid who's never squatted before, like you have him start squatting or whatever, like it's gonna look bad and no amount of cueing is gonna fix it. Like nothing's gonna fix it, no variation's gonna fix it. You just need to let them do their thing and they're gonna get better at it. But then you get to the point where like you become that intermediate level where it's like, okay, we you know what you're doing to an extent where you know how to move or you know how to internalize what you feel. Like it's not like every squat day you've ever had feels bad like when you first started. And then we can really get nitty gritty with it. And then you get to the point where you've been around for, I mean, how long have you been powerlifting for?
Powerlifting, I want to
Like
say,
squatting and benching and deadlifting.
oh shit, 7 years,
Yeah.
eight. I've been doing this for a while, yeah.
Yeah. So you get to a point like that where it's like, you don't have to think about technique. You know what I mean? Like I don't cue much.
Yeah,
I'm not cueing like higher level people either as much. It's
yeah.
more so let them do their thing. So
And I think that's another testament to time probably being the most important programming variable.
what do you mean? Just give it like
Like you just
the
need to,
longer you train, the better you're going to be.
you just need to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it's like so many people have these expectations of I need to be XYZ. It's like, oh, you have the genetic potential for it. You could hire the best coach. But it's like sometimes you just need to train for a long time, and your brain just needs to like learn how to work out and how to train and how to squat and bench and deadlift, and ultimately like you can learn as much as you want. It just takes time.
Hmm.
I feel like I've been pretty rigorous for most of my training career, in terms of just learning more about training and learning more about programming. But as much as I did that, I don't think anything could have made me a better lifter than just like doing it since I was 15 or 14. And
Hmm.
I'm 23 now, and it's like, yeah, I learned so much, but I don't feel like I use a lot of what I learned in my own training. It's purely just coming in and day out, practicing, refining, and doing all that stuff.
Hmm. The time thing is good. I heard this quote or this one of the data, I don't remember who, but one of the data driven strength guys said this. They said the number one like limiter on your powerlifting career is going to be like injuries. So just staying healthy, being able to train a long time, like because injuries are going like, if you continue to get hurt or whatever, you're going to burn out. So if you can just stay healthy, keep lifting, like, do your thing, like it's going to just, you're just going to get so much stronger. Um,
LeBron method.
yeah, dude, powerlift for 20, what's he in year 23 or something?
21. He's 41, dude. The guy's 41.
Yeah, and he can still jump through the roof.
Yeah, that's what you want. You don't want like a Tracy McGrady type powerlifting career where you have like 2 or 3 years where you're averaging 30. You want the LeBron James like 2,000 games in a row where you have 10 points, or double digit points, and you
Hmm.
want that. That's the goal. You don't want a T-Mac career. You don't want a Grant Hill career. You want a LeBron. Just your entire career, you score double digits at least once every game, all the way till now.
A little side piece here. Who's the GOAT?
Fuck, you don't really make me answer this. I
You
think
have to answer.
I think it's Jordan. I think it has to be Jordan. And
Hmm.
I think the reason why I think who said this? Some I don't know his last name. His name's Nick on ESPN. He was just saying that like the reason why Jordan is the GOAT is because when we think about who's the GOAT, we always have to compare him to Jordan.
Hmm.
There's
And
no
and
like,
it's really every sport too.
yeah, yeah. And
So
you're like, if you're in the GOAT debate and there's one person that's always in the GOAT debate, he's probably the GOAT. It's probably Tom
Mhm.
Brady, right?
Yeah.
Probably like, Wayne Gretzky is like undisputedly the GOAT. It's probably Michael Jordan because we always have Kobe versus Jordan debates. We always have LeBron versus Jordan debates. We never have like a Wilt versus LeBron debate. It's
Yeah.
just not a thing. It has to be Jordan.
I can respect that. Would you say LeBron's a better basketball player though?
100%.
Okay. I
100.
I can get behind that. I can get behind that the the mythos of Michael Jordan being the greatest athlete ever or whatever.
Yeah.
But LeBron's dude, he was built in the lab,
What's
I
what's
guess.
crazy to me, this is gonna go really off topic. What's crazy to me was that like I mean, I wasn't around for that time. Were there ever like Jordan versus Wilt debates when Jordan like
I
first
don't know.
retired? That if because if he retired and he was like the consensus GOAT, that's insane. Like there was no one else they wanted to compare him with.
I feel like when he retired, the idea was that Jordan was the best ever.
That's crazy.
Um, I
There's
feel
there's,
like, I
there's
mean,
no
but that guy transcended the sport. I mean, people, I guess, were probably comparing him to like Magic and Bird, but like Bird and Magic and Bird's problem was Magic's career was cut short and Bird was hurt all the time and his career
yeah.
was cut short. I think Bird played like 11 years.
Yeah.
So
Like the fact that you could retire and like be the consensus GOAT, maybe even while you was playing. I don't know. I wasn't around, but
yeah,
if you were still playing and you're the consensus GOAT, like you've got to be on a whole different level. And
but
there's no one else that is playing right now that we're like, yeah, he's the best. It's always a comparison.
I feel like he was maybe like the grandfather of like modern basketball,
Yeah.
as in a sense, like isolation and like I don't know. I watched some Michael Jordan highlights and like some of the dudes he was playing against just like would not even be NBA players today. I feel like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
what did I say? I said something in the group chat and it really upset Eric. I said something crazy like Andre Iguodala would average like
Yes, yes,
30
dude.
in the
It's like
90s, but it's
Jalen Brown.
true.
Jalen Brown is Michael Jordan with no left hand. It's
Yeah.
like that, like which is from a player standpoint, like I don't know, it might be true. That's just it's so funny though.
Like dude, you can drop like a an average NBA player is like a top 0.001% basketball player. You could drop them in the 90s. They're like arguably the best player. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Yeah.
But eras matter too. Like, you know,
So okay, to take this back to powerlifting, Johnny Candido posted a video like 2 days ago. I don't know if you saw it, but he was talking about like his opinion. He called it the objective top 10 powerlifters of all time, but he put Ed Cohen as like fourth or third or something. I think it was
mhm.
fourth. And I wasn't around for Ed Cohen time. I don't know how good he is. He showed some stats. Dude, Ed Cohen's a fucking beast.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the reason why Ed Cohen wasn't placed higher on the list was because since Ed Cohen's time till now, the powerlifting pool has increased like I don't know, like 300% or something,
Hmm.
And like the reason why he had John Hack as number one, or the reason why he had Perk as number two, was because like they're objectively stronger than everyone, but they're objectively stronger than like way, way more people.
Hmm.
John Hack is stronger than everybody under like 240 pounds, and he's like 195 pounds. He's like
Hmm.
stronger than everyone, right? Ed Cohen was probably like that, but there was probably like 3,000 people powerlifting, and now it's like 300,000 or something
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, errors definitely do matter. Um, so I don't know. You got to ask me this question in like 5 years, and then we'll see.
Um, Ed Cohn, people love Ed Cohn in Omaha. I never met him, but they hold an Ed Cohn meet where he's the head ref at my gym every year.
Yeah.
So I've like seen him in person. I've never like spoken to him, but I've seen him like a few times now. Um, and yeah, dude has the longest arms ever.
Really? His
Yes.
deadlift looks incredible.
Yeah,
Like
longest arms ever.
genuinely incredible. Yeah, dude, and he was yoked. I finally saw a video of him. I never really like watched any sort of Ed Cohen videos, but like, dude, I saw him and I went, "There's no way that he." Well, I had the whole like, when people see Russ and they're like, "He's not natural." Like I had
Mhm.
that. I had
Yeah.
that. There's no way, dude. This guy looks insane.
Um, yeah, Ed's a nice guy too, from what I've heard. Like, again, I've never actually talked to him, but he seems to be a really nice guy, and I think he does a lot of seminars and stuff we're used to. So
Yeah, he's done a few up here.
yeah.
Pretty cool. Sick.
Um, Wrapping up, back to technique. We'll wrap this up here. Um, I've seen a post recently on video angles, getting videos from athletes. Devin's talked about this. I think he made a post once too. Um, what angle, I guess, how important is getting videos from clients in like the specific angles with certain things you might be looking at?
I think it's huge. And it's like the small, small things. And again, it all goes back to feeling and sensations and stuff. But I think there's a lot of like really small things that you get from each angle. And
Hmm.
I think when someone is dealing with some sort of a technique problem, I'm probably going to ask for like direct side and then, based on the lift, like certain other ones. The big thing that like I like to look at, especially for the lower body stuff, is going to be your angle of your knee relative to the foot. And that's been something I've been thinking about a lot more. And just to kind of go into more of that like movement science and stuff like that, like in my head, if your knee's kind of angle is more on the inside of your foot, and if it's like your foot's this way and your knee is kind of coming in, and on the other side
Hmm.
it's like that. Like hips are probably more biased towards internal rotation, probably more of like a compressed individual, probably has a hard time, have creating any sort of ER. Um, and then vice versa, like if your foot's like this and your knee always goes out, and you kind of think of like, um, oh shit, who's that guy? He's the anchor coach, the new one.
I can't remember. I don't know his name.
Dude, the deadlift it looks insane.
Yeah, he
What's his
pulls a
name?
lot.
Yeah,
Pulls
but
like 800 or something
yeah, but if
crazy.
you look at his deadlift, it's like the toe is like more or less straight, but then the knee comes like all the way out, and I'm like, oh, that's someone whose hips are probably more biased towards ER. They're able to expand really well. They're really able to open up, but like you're not really getting that from a side angle, um, and you're not really getting that always from like a 45-degree angle, like the Instagram angle, but like from the front, like you could really tell when someone is like more compressed, more expanded, able to collapse really well, able to open up really well. So I think for things like that, that's pretty important. And I think for lifters, like if they have the luxury of being able to record from different angles, I would always like within a week. I don't know, I bench 4 times a week. I probably send 2 videos of bench per session. So I take 8 videos of my bench per week. I'll try to do like two side, two from the front, two from like a 45-degree angle, maybe one from, another side where like my feet are towards the camera and then like the other side, right? I'll try to kind of get the full
Hmm.
360 because I don't know how many clients of yours that you train with, but when I do get to train with them, or even when I watch them on meet day, like there's so many like small things that you really just don't see on the video.
Mhm.
And it's not just like bar positioning, center of mass, whatever. It's like, oh, what are your elbows doing like when you come
Yeah.
up? I never see that from a side angle. The plates are always blocking it, but like, oh, I didn't know that your elbows kind of like tuck forward a little bit when you come up out of the hole. It's small things like that that I think having the various angles from the back, from the front, from the side, from the angles, those matter like a lot.
That's the meet day thing's interesting, and I will oftentimes have my eyes open on meet day to issues. Like one that comes to mind that popped in my head immediately was like I've had people where they maybe crop the walkout out or not the walkout's not cropped in the video. Or maybe the unrack on like a squat is not cropped in the video. And maybe I don't think anything of it. It doesn't really catch my or it doesn't really pop up as like, oh hey, what's your walkout look like? Or whatever the case may be. And then I either will see it on meet day or they'll randomly like send a video where they do crop it in there and I see it and I'm like, oh, we have to fix that like right away.
Yeah.
Like, as
Yeah,
soon
we
as
need
this meet's done, we're fixing it, or like we need to fix that like next session. Like even in little things like that. Like we don't you don't think of it's not talked about like, hey, here's how you should walk out, or hey, here your rack height's too low on this bench press and it's causing XYZ problems and we can just fix it if you drop your or up your rack height one or whatever the case is. So yeah. I always tell people I have like a document that every athlete has a link to in their sheet that is my communication expectations, and it'll cover like the video bullet point is
I have one too.
2 to 3 videos per lift each day and then varying angles. So like I just it is a bit of a pet peeve where people will just send like the 45-degree angle and that's fine. But if you send it for 4 of your squat videos you sent me a week or 6 of your squat videos you send a week, like I'm not going to get anything out of that. And I think we should try to chase the personal training like esque
Hmm.
technique coaching where, if I was, and I've even said to this to people, it's like, if I was in the gym with you, I could walk 360 around you as you squat, as you bench, as you deadlift, and look at everything. And we want to try to kind of create that in a sense, mix the angles up, send some sides, send some fronts, send some 45-degree angles. And obviously there will be certain things that are better to look at, uh, or better. Some angles will be better to notice specific things than others, but I think in general, just trying to mix those up. So, and cropping the whole setup,
Yeah,
like I said.
the whole thing is huge. I feel like the unrack is probably the least talked about part
Hmm.
any lift, and it's not just like having a good unrack, but there's so many different ways you can unrack
Hmm.
that cause such a downstream of like a bunch of different stuff. I think John has always talked about like trying to unrack with the head up or the way that you unrack and the position of your rib cage kind of can dictate how the actual squat goes. Like
Yeah, for sure.
I'm big on like where's your hand pressure when you're unracking on bench, kind of what are your fingers doing, what are your hands doing, all that stuff. And even like deadlift, top down versus bottom up setup. How much slack are you pulling on the bar? Like, are you yanking on the bar before you're doing anything? Are you adjusting your feet after you've held the bar? Just small stuff like that. I feel like honestly, I'd rather just get the whole like press record, do the thing, come back, and I'll just see the whole thing. And I'd rather scroll through it than to miss out on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot that happens before the rack or the start command or whatever. So I feel like that was a good conversation. I feel like we covered a lot and very insightful, and we also talked a little basketball too.
Now people know. Now people know that I think Jordan's the GOAT and all you bronze
But you
sexual.
think LeBron's the best player ever?
I think he's the best player ever. All right. I don't want to say
Objectively, he's the best basketball player to ever walk
Joe
the.
Johnson is the best basketball player to ever live. Kyrie Irving is the best basketball player to ever live. He is undoubtedly my GOAT. He's a wizard. I'm gonna stand by that. I've never seen somebody more skilled. That's my take. Clip that. That's the thing. That's the real.
Alrighty. That'll
There you
be the Instagram reel that I use to promote this.
go. You've never seen anybody do a left-handed floater for game over Jokic and then fucking look at his hand like that. That's crazy. You know, that's my
Alrighty, sir. All your stuff will be in the description. Where can everyone find you? I'll throw it in the front of the video too, but where can everyone find you?
Alex Tran PL on Instagram. Um, that's pretty much it. I don't really do anything else. 3out.mg on Instagram too. That's all of my more creative stuff. If you're just looking for edits, powerlifting edits, kind of like cultural discussions on powerlifting, that's where a lot of that stuff is going to be pointed. 3out.mg, Alex Tran PL. That's it.
Alrighty. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake. Bye bye.